balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno. We appreciate everybody joining us live on YouTube, joining us live on Facebook. We appreciate those listening to this as a podcast after the fact on Google, Spotify, or Apple, or on YouTube after the fact. Thank you to all of you. Matt, last week I said these shows are a lot more fun when the Dodgers win on Sunday. This didn't feel like just a win. This felt like something somehow more than just a win.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I know on your live post-game show Friday night, there were a ton of Padre fans that chose to join you. And I think, were you and Blake?
Yeah.
I expect that we'll have the same number of Padre fans in here talking about the series again, right? I mean, it seems like the only logical outcome.
Yeah, no, I was wondering, I said, hey, those people that were paying money to have comments on our post-game show. And of course, we picked the only loss in the entire series to have that one. But if you missed today's game, incredible stuff. Dodgers win 5-2. They were down to their final out in the 9th inning when Mookie Betts hit a game-tying home run. They were down to their final out in the top of the 10th with a runner in scoring position in jeopardy of not cashing any of that in. Well, that became a big hit for Michael Busch, who we'll talk a lot about tonight. James Outman, of course, follows with the home run, and all of a sudden it's 5-2. Evan Phillips doesn't even allow the ghost runner to score. So lots to get to tonight. Tonight we will talk a little bit about this series, a lot about this series with the Padres, as well as the week that we are recapping here. We're going to talk about some guys offensively on the Dodgers who are bouncing back in a big way. Chris Taylor, one of those names. We'll talk rotation stuff. Noah Syndergaard gets skipped, doesn't even pitch since the last time we talked, Matt, and wasn't on the injured list. So we'll talk that. We'll talk Gavin Stone's debut. Clayton Kershaw struggles. Dustin May, though, on the flip side, a great outing for him. I do want to talk about Michael Busch and kind of what the plan is with him because I'm confused. We'll get to a JD Martinez update. We'll even talk a little bit about Padres scoreboard stuff on Friday night here at the end. But let's talk about this week. I always like to start the show with a recap. The Dodgers extended their win streak this past week to as many as 6. They sweep the Phillies. They lose Friday to the Padres. They end up winning 2 out of the next 3 against the Padres. They are now 21-14. And again, we could sit here and talk about like the whole week, Matt, but it feels like a mistake because this series against the Padres, we know what an emphasis gets placed on these games because of last year's NLDS. And we'll ask the question of is this a rivalry? But this series felt like a decent sized deal. The Dodgers lose Friday. Clayton Kershaw's on the mound, and it's like, oh no, they didn't do anything with runners in scoring position. And yet they come back Saturday. They win 2-1 on a Chris Taylor home run. They come back tonight. They had left 9 guys on base before Mookie Betts hits a home run, and then Michael Busch cashes in the 10th. And so this felt like, again, I keep saying it, but like it felt sort of like they exercised some demons maybe this weekend down in San Diego.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but honestly, in talking to the players down there, this series was just like any other series against any other opponent in any other city. And, I'll save some of my thoughts as we, dive further into it. But I do agree with you. We discussed it last week on our live show, kind of looking ahead at what was coming up. And I said, not to completely overlook the homestand finishing first. Like obviously the Padres series was looming. And then when we did our preview video on Friday and, discussed kind of the Dodgers reshuffling their starting rotation, like you said, bumping back Noah Syndergaard, keeping Clayton Kershaw kind of close to regular rest as possible and having him start Friday, giving Dustin May 2 extra days. The Dodgers it wasn't an accident that the 3 starters for the Dodgers were who they were this weekend. And so, as much as what they were kind of saying publicly, like, yeah, the series, it mattered. And frankly, maybe the Diamondbacks will continue to, sort of make it a 3-team NL West race. But if not, if it comes down to the Dodgers and Padres, the way everybody was sort of predicting heading into this season, these matchups mean a lot. And they mean a lot more now with the balanced schedule because you're not playing each other as often. And so that's fewer opportunities to really, create a full game of separation. And if you lose a full game or, potentially 2 games in the case of the Padres by losing 2 of 3 this weekend, I'm not sure if they got the memo after Friday that there were still 2 more games left to be played. It could potentially, end up making a huge difference in the standings by the end of the year.
Now, just you said 3-team race. Are we crossing the Colorado Rockies off? It feels maybe a little premature, or do you feel comfortable crossing the Rockies off from the NL West division race?
Yeah, with all due respect to Bud Black and the Colorado Rockies, I think they could, maybe start planning on next year and further down the line.
Yeah, maybe even not even next year. We maybe start 2025 and beyond. Maybe not Bud Black, who knows? But yeah, I mean, you look at the standings right now, Matt. The Dodgers, since the last time we talked, they win 5 out of 6. They sweep the Phillies. They score 36 runs in those 3 games. They get the day off Thursday. They lose Friday in what was pretty. I would say like there was some emotion in that game. It felt like, again, these two teams don't like each other. They've acknowledged that there's a becoming history, I should say. And then they bounce back with 2 wins. So the Dodgers win 5 out of 6. They're 21-14, as I said. They're one of 2 teams in the National League with a winning percentage of 60% or higher. I mean, it just goes to show where this team is at. They are kind of where, well, I shouldn't say where people expected them to be, but they're in really good shape. They're winning 60% of their games. Like, for all the people that were disappointed 2 weeks ago, and I came on and I said jokingly, like, hey, hot take, the Dodgers are going to be fine. Well, they're fine already. Like, they haven't even gotten healthy in the bullpen. They haven't figured everything out offensively. They haven't figured everything out pitching wise, and yet they are already fine. And so I guess the question I want to ask you, Matt, is when you look back, they sweep the Phillies, they take 2 out of 3 from the Padres. How are you feeling about this group? Like, does taking 2 out of the 3 from the Padres change anything? Does the fact that they go down there, they lose Friday, they win an ugly one on Saturday, if we're being honest, 2-1, but Dustin May pitches great. And then Sunday, they do what they did. Because you have to acknowledge, by the way, the bullpen, which has been the weakness for this team the entire season, it's been incredible. Yesterday and today, absolutely lights out. Guys like Yency Almonte get some 4 outs with no hits allowed today. Evan Phillips, obviously, with a pair of saves, and he was dominant. I mean, today, Julio went 5.2 innings. This game goes 10, so they got 4 1/3 from their bullpen. They allowed 1 base runner. They struck out 6 batters. That's Almonte, Gonzalez, Ferguson, and Phillips. Where are you at on this team, big picture, before we dive into some of the smaller pieces?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I slightly more encouraged than maybe I had been, because like I did say, as much as they were playing well against the Cardinals and the Phillies, the Cardinals especially, that's a team that's just absolutely reeling. Their big catcher that they signed in the offseason is no longer going to be their catcher. The Phillies, watching them sort of play, obviously it's a different team, different year, but I watched those games at the stadium and I was thinking, man, like, how was this, the National League champion last year?
Yeah.
And, the Padres, as much as they, similar to the Dodgers, they got off to a little bit of a slower start before playing well over the last 10 days to 2 weeks. And so I thought like this was a pretty good test for them. And so, fair has to be fair. The Dodgers won 2 out of 3. My concern still would sort of be, how many times are you going to get a home run with 2 outs in the 9th inning to tie the game? Like, that's not just in general, whether it's Mookie or anybody else, right? Like, that's not necessarily, I think, how you want to sort of live, but, it worked. And so credit to the Dodgers. I don't think there was ever any really question as to whether this team sort of gives up or mails it in. At least not for me. It's always frankly been more of, is there enough sort of intensity from kind of the outset? And I think that still is sort of in question, even after, taking 2 of 3 from the Padres.
Yeah, and the only piece I would sort of counter with, while it's unlikely to rely on a Mookie Betts to hit a home run with 2 outs in the 9th, they were 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position up until that point and losing by 1 run. Now the Padres were 2 for 10, so we could do this back and forth all day, but it's kind of like the way I think about it this way is, Matt, is like, when you look at the offense right now, like, is this where the offense is going to end up? Like, between now and the end of the regular season, is the offense going to stay the same? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Like, do the same thing for your starting pitching. Do the same thing for the bullpen. I think the bullpen's going to be better at the end of this season than it is right now. I think the offense, personally, is going to be better than what we've seen right now. And this is talking about an offense, by the way, that is, I believe, leading the National League in runs scored. So, like, I think some of these pieces will become more. I think just plain and simple, we're going to get less Miguel Rojas at bats. We're going to get less of those types of players seeing meaningful moments. And so I think what we're seeing from the Dodgers right now is not like they're overperforming. I think if anything, this is who they are, or maybe even there's room for improvement on some of the things. And that'll get us into some of the conversations we're going to have. But Matt, before we kind of dive into some of the minutia, as we talk about the Dodgers taking 2 out of 3 from the Padres, one of the big storylines coming out of this one, and it's every time the Dodgers play the Padres really, is a question. Are the Dodgers and Padres really rivals? Now, one of the moments that this became sort of in focus was Mookie Betts was wearing a microphone, one of your favorite things in all of Major League Baseball. Mookie Betts is in right field wearing a microphone. It only lasted 30 seconds. He got asked about 12 questions about how awesome Manny Machado was, and then the interview ended. But the question that got to him last was, how does the Dodgers-Padres rivalry compare to the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry? And lots of people were this question was ridiculous on 100 different levels, in my opinion. First of all, I think the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry is insane, and how good those teams have been at the same time. Like, I think it's insane. I think it's on another level, first. Second, the Dodgers' biggest rival is not the Padres. It's clearly the Giants. The question should have been, how does the Dodgers-Giants... Obviously, they wouldn't ask that in a Padres game, but you get my point. But the third piece of it is this last one. Are the Dodgers and Padres even rivals? So, Matt, I'll let you answer first. Do you believe the Padres are the are rivals of the Dodgers?
I think they are now, and I've come around on that. And honestly, what changed it is the postseason last year. I think had the Dodgers won that NLDS matchup, I think it would have been, kind of more of the same of, hey, like, you guys, the Padres are trying to, make it a rivalry every time, but really, what have they done to the Dodgers? But now, not only did they knock the Dodgers out in the playoffs, but they took them out in a season that the Dodgers set a franchise record with 111 wins. They were, heavy World Series favorites, on and on and on. And so, yeah, I've come around on it, and I think two things can be true. The Giants can be the Dodgers' biggest rival. Obviously, they are, but there's also a little bit of room for some rivalry with the Padres, and I think the players feel it a little bit. Will Smith, honestly, credit to him this weekend. He was the only one to come out and say, that it basically is a rivalry, and these were like postseason games in May. Everybody else was downplaying it. Dave Roberts has also come around and said, I think it was late last year, at some point last year, he said, yeah, it is a rivalry. And Bob is commenting, yeah, like I agree. I think it is now, and I think it can be true that the Padres can be a rival without them being at the same level as the Giants.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. No matter how you answer this question, I would find it hard to believe anybody that says the Padres are a bigger rival than the Giants. I do think there's history that has to be a part of it. With that said, now if somebody wanted to say, hey, by definition, there is only one rival, you can't have more than one rival, then fine. In my book, the Giants are clearly the team that I dislike the most. They are clearly the team I would want to win the least. But I feel the same way about the Padres, just to a lesser degree. So I consider the Dodgers and Padres to be rivals now. I think the postseason series last year adds into that. I think the fact that both of these teams have two of the higher payrolls, they're two of the best teams in the league. You could argue they're the two best teams in the National League, I think, on paper. I think the geography between the two, San Diego is a lot closer to Los Angeles than San Francisco is. The fact that Dodgers fans typically filled in that stadium for all these years. So yes, the Padres have been terrible for a long time, but in my estimation, the Padres are the rivals of the Dodgers, even if they're not the biggest rival. Now, if you ask the Padres fans who they hate the most, it's obviously the Dodgers. So I do love that we can kind of pat little brother on the head and say, oh, that's so cute. You hate us the most. Well, we hate the Giants the most. I think that infuriates them even more, which is even better. But there is something that happens when these two teams have played the last few years where there's the bad blood that exists. There's the Machado piece. There's like a lot of these guys I just don't like. I've joked about how Jake Cronenworth, I couldn't tell you why, just don't like him. Not a big Trent Grisham fan. Like there's been some of those things that have gone back and forth, the Gratterall and throwing his glove or whatever, like all that stuff. So I think, yes, they are rivals, even if they're not as big of rivals as the Giants. Like, can there be two rivals? Can you have more than one rival, Matt? Is two the max? I don't know. Is there room for a third on here?
My rule of thumb is, probably three would be the max, because if you're looking at the Dodgers specifically, it would be the Giants, the Yankees, and then the Padres. And, I see this comment here bringing up the Astros. I don't know if it's a rivalry. like honestly, like I think the emotions there extend beyond whatever a rival would be, because that's just like, to me, it's kind of like a different level. Yeah, that's a great comment. For those of you listening, it says Houston's only rival is integrity. But yeah, I think my general rule of thumb is you probably don't have more than 3 rivals, just because I find it hard to believe that there would be enough history with 3 different opponents for it to constitute being a rivalry.
Yeah, and the Yankees, like, historically, I understand that. I don't view the Yankees even remotely as a rival. Like, we're in 2 different leagues. We're going to play them, every year because of the new rule. But I mean, prior to this year, we played them every 6 years. And so you'd have to meet now. Is there a ton of history? Like, would my dad be watching this and probably think I'm crazy for saying this? Probably. But like anybody under the age of 40, I think would probably be hard pressed to call the Yankees a rival. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I just don't. Like, I don't care about the Yankees. Like, them winning or losing means nothing to me. I definitely despise the Astros far more. Again, is that a rivalry? No, I just hate the Astros. Like, I think you can hate somebody without them being a rival. So I've got the Giants 1, the Padres 2. I don't really care about anybody else. Like, Angels don't bother me. Rockies don't bother me. Diamondbacks don't bother me. So I think, so it sounds like, Matt, we're both saying the answer is yes, but don't even come close to putting this on the same level as the Dodgers and Giants.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think that that's fair. And there's no rule that says you can only have one rival, at least not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, if Will Smith is acknowledging it, Matt, and for those that know what an interview that Will Smith is, not a big give you anything guy. If he's saying it out loud, then I think that has to count for something, right, Matt?
Yeah, definitely. He's usually one that's very he's not a talker in general, and so his interviews are pretty, straightforward with stuff. And so if he's willing to sort of acknowledge it, and obviously, I think a lot of it had to do with being down in San Diego. And I can tell you that, on Friday night, as the Dodgers were struggling to get their hits with runners in scoring position, it very much felt it. I was having flashbacks to last October, and I was thinking, man, like, this is just a repeat of that. Yeah. But yeah, if it's a good way of putting it. If Will Smith says it, then so it is.
Yeah. Kevin mentions the Cardinals. I think that's a fair one. Like, if you go back a number of years, it felt like we played the Cardinals every single year in the playoffs. You obviously had Joe Kelly hitting Hanley Ramirez and costing him that. It was just a team, but that one felt there was no geography. There was no, and it was very flash in the pan. Like, it would happen in the postseason and then be gone. I think the fact that we play the Padres as often as we do, we all know as many Padres fans as most people in Southern California tend to do. I think that's kind of one of the factors that helps me identify some of that stuff. So, all right, let's get to the next conversation here. As we've talked about kind of the Dodgers offense leading the National League in runs, Matt, I thought this was interesting. Coming into today's game, so I was doing this research before today's game, so today's stats not factored in. But over the last 2 weeks, the Dodgers, the top 5 guys offensively, according to Fangraphs WAR, just over the last 2 weeks, like, who have been the Dodgers' hottest hitters over the last 2 weeks? And I would say there's 3 surprising names on this list. Okay. So 3rd on the list is Freddie Freeman. 4th on the list is Mookie Betts. You would expect those 2 to be in the top 5 of this list every single point in the season that you pick up on it. Will Smith was 6th on this list for those noticing, for those who care. First on this list was Jason Hayward. Over this stretch, 346 batting average, 433 on base, 615 slugging percentage. Second on this list is a guy, Matt, that if I was being honest, and I have been honest on the show many times, I would never have expected to be on the top 5 of this list at any point. It's not Austin Barnes. Don't worry about that. We're not getting that crazy. It's Chris Taylor. Chris Taylor hitting 333 with a 371 on base, a 667 slugging percentage. Just in the last week alone, had 5 extra base hits in 16 at-bats coming into this one. So those are the top 2. You've got Freeman and Betts, and then you've got Miguel Vargas, 5th on this list. 256 batting, 319 on base, 558 slugging percentage with 2 home runs. So let's talk about each of these guys, because I think one of the stories of this team has been sort of the give and take of different players. James Outman, unbelievable stretch to start the regular season, has started to cool off a little bit. Not today. Hits the big home run in the 10th inning. But he was a guy that was carrying them for a while. And then he's dipped back. But then here comes Jason Hayward, and here comes Chris Taylor, and now Miguel Vargas is starting to find it. And all of a sudden, you start factoring that in with Max Muncy, who leads majors in home runs, Smith, Freeman, Betts. We're starting to deepen the lineup a little bit. So let's just talk real quick. Jason Hayward. He's not allowed to hit against lefties. The Dodgers have made that abundantly clear. He was coming out in all situations Even ridiculous situations, as we found out today. Miguel Rojas pinch hitting for Jason Hayward is insane to me. We're going to set that one aside for now. But are you buying Jason Hayward as like a borderline everyday starter and a guy who's going to be like an above average offensive player and major league player? Like what level of buying Jason Hayward are we at?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I think he's a very good, fourth outfielder who can start for you a couple times a week. I'm a little surprised that he's on this list only because I wasn't sure if the batted ball luck had kind of swung enough in his favor. Like to me, it sort of felt like, okay, he had, a really good game and he was getting rewarded for his hitting. And then I felt like he, would follow it up with, another 2 or 3 games of going, 0 for 3 or 0 for 4, whatever the case is. So it's a little surprising that in some hand that he's on there, but in terms of the quality of at bats and kind of how hard he's been hitting the ball, it does make sense because like we were saying a couple weeks ago, like you hope that at some point he'll start to get rewarded for that. And now that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, you mentioned his StatCast stuff. I mean, it's dark red everywhere you look. He's in the 98th percentile for hard hit. He's 89th percentile for average exit velocity. Everything is above average except for sprint speed, which is 45th percentile. But I mean, most of this stuff is like top 15% in all of Major League Baseball. The walk rate is there. The defensive metrics are all there. And so with Jason Hayward, it's just been an incredible stretch for him as far as how he has been able to put this together. I think that's the piece that has really stood out to me is just that it's starting to come together. He's been hitting the ball hard, but to your point, it's starting to cash in. Now let's talk Chris Taylor, because I think this is the most interesting name on this list. I mentioned it just this week alone coming into today, 7 of 16, 3 doubles, a triple, a home run, still striking out a lot, 5 strikeouts and 16 at bats there. But he's starting to stack games here. And I sent everybody in our group chat a text. I added Chris Taylor onto my fantasy team. That has been rewarding after being the guy that was like way out on Chris Taylor. He's never going to figure it out. What are the options out there on the market? I'm hesitant still. I've seen him do it to believe that he can, but it's been so long, Matt, that I feel like I don't know if I need 4 weeks or 5 weeks till I actually buy in fully, but at least for now, I'm enjoying the ride.
Yeah, I understand that there's certainly still, reason for, maybe some hesitation to fully buy in. But, honestly, for me, I think this is the most encouraged that I've been with him, mainly because this is the longest. There's Blake. This is the longest, kind of stretch like this that he's put together, right? In the past, it was always like 1 or 2 games, then he'd go into another drought for a week. And so, like you said, to see him kind of stacking, one good performance after the other has certainly been encouraging, and it matches, what he told Kirsten Watson after Saturday's game is that he's been, feeling a little bit better of late and he's been kind of making progress and that he was close to, really feeling where he wants to be. So if there are people out there who say, I don't believe in him just yet, I certainly get that. But I think if you're ever going to, now is kind of the time to start thinking that Chris Taylor, can give the Dodgers a little bit of the production that they were expecting and some of the stuff we saw from him in years past.
Yeah, looking at his StatCast, it's a hilarious one. I said Jason Hayward's was all red. This one's a mix of dark red and dark blue. The positive, 88th percentile in barrel rate, 68th percentile in hard hit rate, 81st percentile in expected slug. Those are all good. First percentile for strikeout rate, second percentile for whiff rate. So it's the good and the bad of Chris Taylor. Like when he hits a ball, what that tells me is when he hits a ball, he's making solid contact every time. He just doesn't hit the ball very often, even when he swings and misses. And so I don't know. Matt's got a little dog friend joining him. Normally it's my dog barking. Matt's dog joining in the fun today. But yeah, I mean, it's like, again, the bar for Chris Taylor is not like, we don't need Chris Taylor to be a 120 weighted runs created plus guy. He doesn't need to be a way above average player. Like if he could just be average offensively, he can play shortstop competently. He's a better option in the outfield than against lefties than basically anybody else they have. And so if he can just be average offensively, that would be a huge win, I think, for the Dodgers. And again, I have been so strongly denying that this could possibly happen because so many things in his swing, like I joked, like Max Muncy changes one thing in his swing and everything clicks into place. Chris Taylor, it feels like it's the kick, it's the load, it's the swing, it's the angle. It's like so many things have to be clicking. So I'm hesitant to say he's back, but again, I'm buying a little bit of stock in my fantasy league. I'm literally buying Chris Taylor stock. So we'll see how this plays out. Last one here, Miguel Vargas. This is a prospect that everybody said, hey, we don't know what the defense is going to look like, especially at second base, but he's going to hit. And it wasn't going to be home runs, but it's a guy who's going to hit a lot of doubles. He's going to make solid contact, hit for average, that kind of thing. It feels like that's starting to settle in. He said, I can't remember who he told this to. I believe they mentioned it on the broadcast, but he said, hey, the fact that I couldn't swing a bat in spring training and was still going up there and just standing there and watching pitches, and I was walking a ton, and then we get to the regular season and I could swing the bat, but I'm still walking a ton, that it actually messed with him a little bit because he was so used to being able to just be picky and walking that when he actually did swing the bat or looked to swing, it kind of messed with him. It feels like he's gotten out of that. It feels like he's back to quote unquote his normal self. It sounds like, and we're starting to see the results again. An OPS of almost 900 over the last couple of weeks, knocks in a couple home runs as well. So is this the Miguel Vargas that you're sort of expecting to see for the last, for the remainder of the regular season?
Yeah, definitely. And, I'll even add another thing that he mentioned, kind of one of I think it was the second to last game on this last homestand was his, I think it was his right thumb, right? That he got hit by a pitch early in the season. Like that, has sort of fully healed now and just is feeling better. And so that was a factor as well. And yeah, I think, him having to only track pitches in spring training in retrospect was a little bit of a blessing in disguise for him because now you're going to put some of that plate discipline with the hit tool that he already was coming up through the farm system with. And that's what we're seeing now. And so, to hear that he's on this list matches my trusty eye test. So it's always good when your numbers and my eyes align on something. But I think, this is, what Vargas can pretty much, is he going to have, 4 hit games every night? Not necessarily, but there's no reason he shouldn't be, productive and, hitting some doubles or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's like Chris Taylor. Miguel Vargas doesn't need to be an all-star offensively. He doesn't need to be a 300 hitter with 30 home runs. But if he's a guy that can hit 270 and give you 20 home runs, a bunch of doubles, and play competent defense like we've seen, again, not gold glove defense, but competent defense at second base, that's an incredibly valuable player, especially from a rookie. And that's kind of all that the Dodgers are asking for right now. All right, let's switch from the offensive side to the pitching side, Matt. And it's been a roller coaster of a week for Dodgers starting pitching. And the guy I want to start with didn't even pitch this week, and that was Noah Syndergaard. Was scheduled to be in the rotation, was taken out of the rotation, and then basically skipped a spot. So he's scheduled to start now on Tuesday. So far this year, Noah Syndergaard has a 6.32 ERA, just 21 strikeouts and 31 in the third innings. He's got a whip of 1.4. His first start, Matt, was 6 innings, 1 earned run. I came on here and said, hey, maybe he's not going to be as bad as we thought he was going to be. He's controlling it. He's striking guys out. He's not walking anyone. Since then, he has allowed 6 runs, 3 runs, 2 runs, 7 runs, 3 runs, and 5 home runs across those 5 starts. It hasn't been great. Again, 6.32 ERA. Do you think where are the Dodgers at with Syndergaard? They call Gavin Stone up. We're going to get to him in a moment. He gets shelled. They don't necessarily have an obvious better option right now. But are we nearing the point that when Grove or Pepio or Stone comes back or Bobby Miller, who's now pitching, when these guys are ready, is Syndergaard's spot going to be up for grabs? Or do you think the leash is a little bit longer than that?
I think it's a little bit longer. I think at minimum, he's probably going to get to finish out the month of May. So, looking at the calendar, that would be 3-ish more starts, depending on how they align everything. And I think what's kind of concerning is there's still some of the work that they were doing in spring training that seems to be ongoing now.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't I feel like there's been a lot of, kind of start and go with him where there are times where he's, a little encouraged, a little bit of progress, and then he regresses. And so, Dave, when he was discussing their decision to kind of push Syndergaard to the Brewers series, and he was asked, is it mechanical issues? Is it something new? He kind of said, it's a little combo of everything and just trying to still sort of iron things out. And so that's my concern with him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the thing with Syndergaard is, I see some people saying, what somebody was mentioning, hey, put him to the bullpen. The thing with Syndergaard was it felt like it was partially a bet on him regaining some of the stuff that we had seen previously. That hasn't necessarily happened. Then I was like, well, maybe it's just the control piece. Like, hey, you don't need to throw 98, just throw 93, 94, 95 and know where it's going. Mix in more breaking pitches than you're used to or off speed stuff. And that was going to be the key. He is controlling he's not walking a ton of people, but I believe the last start they said was like the first start of his career where he had gone a certain number of innings without striking anybody out. I mean, it's a really bad sign when you're missing as few of bats as he is. And so I think the only reason his leash is where it is because nobody has really grabbed that spot. Like, what happened if Gavin Stone had come out and thrown, 6 innings, 2 hits, no earned runs? I think we're having a way more interesting conversation. If Michael Grove wasn't hurt, if Pepio wasn't hurt, if Bobby Miller wasn't like 1 or 2 starts into his, season, I think the reason Syndergaard is where he is because there's nobody to take his spot right now. But I will say, fast forward a month from now when we're middle of June, I think you're going to have way more guys sort of knocking. Now, on that front, I believe updates injury-wise, like Pepio has started throwing, but it hasn't started a rehab assignment of any sort. Like, I haven't heard anything about Michael Grove. So, I mean, like a lot of these guys, it's not like any of these guys are close to returning. So I would say with Syndergaard, Matt, I think the leash is short. There's just nobody there. And so even if he's terrible, he's going to continue being that fifth starter because there's not a better option currently out there.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And like I said, hope maybe in about a month's time from now, there'll be more clarity on Pepio, on Grove. Yeah. I mean, when he went on the IL initially, there seemed to be minimal concern, but there haven't, and I'll take some responsibility for not asking Dave about it, but there hasn't been an update on him. I think he's sort of, Gavin Stone coming up sort of made Michael Grove a little bit of a forgotten man. But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, we're looking at, Syndergaard sticking in the rotation at least for the rest of this month, and then we'll kind of see from there.
Let's talk Gavin Stone briefly. Dodgers number 2 pitching prospect, a guy many people were super excited to have come up. I posted a video that was a year old talking to Rob Hill, and I love telling the story just because it was such a cool moment for me. Rob Hill's a director of minor league pitching for the Dodgers. He was on our show literally a year ago, May of 2022, and I had a list in my notes of all these pitching prospects that I wanted to ask him about. Hey, what's the deal with Bobby Miller and Ryan Pepio and Landon Knack and, fill in the blank, all the different guys. And I talked to Justin Lorber, our prospect guy, like, hey, who are a couple random ones I should ask about? Kyle Hurt was in that group, like all these guys. And right at the end, I hadn't even gotten to my question. He said, hold on 1 sec. He's like, there's a guy we haven't talked about yet that we need to talk about. And I said, great. That my next question was going to be, who have we not talked about? And he said, Gavin Stone. He said, nobody's talking about Gavin Stone. This guy is a dog. He can throw everything for strikes. He has a bunch of different pitches. I keep telling people, watch out for this guy. I don't know why more people aren't talking about him. Sure enough, fast forward 3 months, 6 months, all the prospect lists come out, and Gavin Stone is on all of them. He's the Dodgers number 2 prospect. He was incredible. At the time, I believe he had not even pitched above single A. He had maybe 1 or 2 starts at double A. So the guy makes a rapid ascent. Everybody's excited for this first start. Safe to say, Matt, it did not go the way anybody hoped it would. 4 innings, 8 hits, 2 walks, 4 earned runs, just 1 strikeout for Gavin Stone. I thought he maybe was going to get a second start this upcoming week in order to keep the rotation where it was. Turns out he doesn't. He gets immediately sent back down to the minor league. So I'm not out on Gavin Stone, just to be clear, but it's hard not to be disappointed by what we saw because I thought this was a guy who has a real chance this season to be like a massive difference maker in the Dodgers rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what your expectations were for him. I think there were certain aspects of his debut that went well, and I've seen some of the comments alluding to, the Phillies were laying off his changeup, and so that made things a lot more difficult for him when you're having to primarily rely on your fastball at that point, and then they're sitting fastball. The first inning, the defense didn't do him any favors, and so his pitch count got a little high. But then he came back in the second inning, and I'm fairly certain he retired the side in order. And if not, it might have only been like a walk or a single or something. So it was encouraging to see him bounce back that way and not really get, too phased or totally unraveled.
Yeah.
And then, at the end of the day, when the kind of the runs and the rally that he did give up to the Phillies, like, it's just sort of a reminder of, hey, like, you can be very good in the minor leagues, but at the end of the day, like, the majors are a different story. And so I'm with you. I think I was surprised that he got optioned, although I think that there's still a little bit of wiggle room for some roster movement if Caleb Ferguson goes on paternity leave. in the next day or two, then they could call up Stone. And I think he would still then make that start on Wednesday, which as of now, Clayton Kershaw is the probable, but I would be surprised. I mean, well, although I guess depending on how his Kershaw start at Petco went, maybe they want him to just skip the Padres this time. But when they changed their rotation the way it did, when they brought up Stone to push everybody back, all signs pointed to lining up the rotation a certain way, not only for this weekend, or this past weekend, but this upcoming weekend as well. So, maybe we'll see Stone again this week, but if not, I think it won't necessarily be long before he gets another chance.
Okay, so that's interesting because when Gavin Stone gets sent down, the only way he can get called back up within such a short amount of time is if somebody gets injured. Now, based on what you're saying, it sounds like the paternity list kind of falls into the same category of that allows you to recall someone quicker than you normally would have otherwise.
Right. So paternity list, injury, or if there's a double header, then he could be called up as kind of the extra player you're allowed to have.
Got it. And for those not tracking, part of the reason we're even guessing this might happen is because the Dodgers play, they have an off day this week. And so basically, if they go to a 6-man rotation, they can do what they did last week, which is set up Kershaw, Julio, and Dustin May. Kershaw, Dustin May, and then Julio to play the Padres next weekend as well. But they would need somebody other than Gonsolin and Syndergaard to start this early series. Whether or not they have that person, do they go to a bullpen game? Is it a long starter? Or does Gavin Stone make his way back up? That's the interesting thing. So last note here on Gavin Stone, Matt, real quick. Does anything change as far as your perspective on Gavin Stone, his ability to contribute? Because I do think if you're banking on a fully healthy season from Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin, we've never seen that. The odds are stacked against you. Even Clayton Kershaw historically has missed some time. So there's 3. Syndergaard, we don't trust. So there's potential for some serious openings in the major league rotation. Pepio's hurt. Grove is hurt. Bobby Miller, as I said, 1 or 2 rehab starts in. Do you think there's a chance that Stone could be a real difference maker at some point this season still? Or does this make you temper expectations, say, hey, it's a young guy. It's his first start. It's his first season. Let's not make any expectations of this guy being in the playoff rotation or something too quickly.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of alluded to, my expectations were never necessarily that he would be a significant difference maker for them this season. Yeah. I think he can be a valuable contributor. I felt that going into this, after kind of seeing the trajectory that he was on, and then seeing how he did in spring training. I thought, he's somebody who could come up and make some starts for them and, hold his own and be serviceable at minimum. And so I still believe in that. I think, it could be similar to what we saw in Pepio's debut season, where there are some starts that are really good, and you see why, he's this prospect. And there are going to be other times where, he sort of struggles depending on what the opponent is. Maybe he just doesn't have command of everything. But yeah, I mean, I'm not any less confident in Gavin Stone, which I think is the key, because like you said, the Dodgers are at some point are going to need to, and it sounds funny to say because they already have, but they're going to need to tap into their starting pitching depth again on maybe, kind of a more consistent basis. And I think having Gavin Stone, having Michael Grove as those options are very good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I said, one of my bold predictions was that Miguel Vargas would finish 3rd among Dodger rookies in Rookie of the Year voting. Half of that prediction looks great because James Outman's crushing the ball. But the other piece of it was I was sort of expecting Gavin Stone to have made his debut. He made his debut earlier than I was expecting, honestly. But it's basically banking on him being able to put together a stretch of 12 to 15 starts at some point for the Dodgers this season. Obviously, the numbers aren't going to look great after that first one, but that was kind of what I was banking on. I'm not changing my overall outlook. If you told me right now that Gavin Stone was in the playoff rotation and that you felt that I was going to feel okay about that, I would believe you. That doesn't seem far-fetched to me. But I also wouldn't, after seeing this, it's okay, just because he's the number 2 prospect, a top 50 prospect in baseball, doesn't mean that success is going to come easy at the major league level. And so I think it sort of tempers expectations a little bit while also not overreacting to one start. One other starter I want to get to, Matt, though, before we talk about Michael Busch and take questions. Again, we appreciate the folks joining us in the chat. I see some folks asking about the Padres scoreboard operator. We're going to get to that, okay? We're going to get to a JD Martinez update as well. But one last starter real quick, Dustin May. Dustin May, his biggest issue, Matt, has been, besides staying healthy, has been whether or not he can miss bats. Him and Gratterall, they have the nastiest stuff. They just haven't missed bats. Dustin May this week, 6 innings, 3 hits, no earned, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. In his last 3 starts, he has thrown 16 and a third innings, Matt. He has 16 strikeouts. Those aren't elite strikeout numbers, but those for Dustin May might as well be elite strikeout numbers. If he can even just be striking out one guy per inning, the level of jump that this guy could make would be remarkable. There's all sorts of sort of nerdy stuff going on about this breaking ball that he's now throwing a little bit harder with less vertical movement and getting way more swing and miss, even though the stuff metrics, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But Dustin May had an incredible start this week and is striking out almost a batter an inning, which he hasn't really done for an extended period of time at any point as a major leaguer. I believe his strikeouts per 9 coming into this one was like below 7. So are you like, what have you made of Dustin May? Do you feel like, are you seeing something different for him, or is this just small sample size? Anything could happen.
I would like to see more, definitely. And I think his start against the Padres was certainly encouraging. I was a little not worried, but I wondered, as much as the Dodgers wanted to give him the extra rest to recover from setting his career high with 104 pitches in his last start, there's the rust versus rest factor. And the Padres do have a talented lineup. The Dodgers had lost the first game, and so things were, could have very quickly kind of sped up on Dustin May and the team in general. And I thought he pitched well. And now what I would like to see is, okay, can you, repeat that type of outing on regular rest? I guess he, because of an off day, he'll get an extra day of rest this time. But can you string together these types of starts without the Dodgers giving you, maybe 6 or 7 days in between each start? His strikeout stuff, I think it can get there. I think it can improve on where he has been. And, some of it is just being sort of a young pitcher. We forget, as much as Dustin May has sort of been around, like he's still young in terms of experience. And this season, especially, I've said it over and over again, it's his first full year since Tommy John. And so that is a factor. And, the fact that he had Tommy John surgery period is a factor. And so, there's certainly some polishing that is going to happen with him over the next 2 years, 3 years, maybe even 4 years.
Yeah.
But if he can, continue to kind of trend in the right direction and do a little bit of what we saw, then I think, there's reason to certainly be optimistic with him.
Yeah, absolutely. One person in the chat THP pointing out, if you go look at some of the StatCast stuff, not even StatCast, but some of the sort of underlying metrics, they're not maybe as encouraging as you would think. In this last game, he had just 3 whiffs on 40 swings. And so 6 strikeouts, but only 3 whiffs. Like the whiffs tend to be the more sustainable number. And that's really discouraging. I believe he's in the 3rd percentile in the major leagues right now for whiff rate. So that would tell you it's not necessarily sustainable. Now, if he's throwing this new breaking pitch more effectively, like, is that why he's catching people looking maybe more often? Again, not necessarily super sustainable, but I think at the end of the day, the fact that the numbers are what they are, like you said, let this run out a little bit. When you look at his career numbers, right now, his strikeouts per 9 this season is just 6.5 strikeouts per 9. That's really, really bad. Like, that's probably one of the worst marks in all of Major League Baseball. Last year, it was 8.7. Again, that's still not very good. But for him, he's able to limit hard contact a little bit. So that's kind of how he evens things out. But Dustin May, I would just be cautiously optimistic about him. I think the fact that the numbers are good is encouraging. And at the same time, if you look below, there's different numbers that are telling a totally different story. And so one of those by the end of the year is going to reveal itself to have been telling you the truth, and the other was going to be lying to you. And which one is which remains to be seen. The numbers that are typically right are not as encouraging as the numbers on the surface is, I guess, the best way of putting it. So we'll see what happens. Okay, let's shift to, before we get to some questions here and some odds and ends, let's talk one more person here, and that's Michael Busch. I want to talk about Michael Busch. Michael Busch, a rookie, called up on April 25th. Arguably the most major league hitting prospect that the Dodgers had, a guy who is a top 100 prospect on a handful of lists, and who everybody believed, much like Miguel Vargas, was going to hit, that he was going to hit for power. In Busch's case, they didn't know if he could field. They didn't know if there was anywhere defensively he could play at even an average level, but he was going to be able to hit. So he gets called up because JD Martinez goes on the injured list. There's some opportunities you would think at designated hitter, maybe a little bit at third base, a little bit at second base, a little bit at first base, a little bit in left field. He gets called up April 25th. He plays the first 3 games he's up. He goes 1 for 10 with 5 strikeouts against the Pirates. He sits out the entire weekend series against St. Louis. So again, this is a young guy who's on the Major League roster, presumably to play. He plays his first 3 games, and then he sits the entire weekend in St. Louis. He starts Monday against the Phillies and goes 2 for 4 with the walk. So his best game of his career, he plays Monday. Tuesday, on the bench, he ends up pinch hitting in the 8th inning. He goes 0 for 1 with a walk. He sits out Wednesday, off day Thursday, sits out Friday, sits out Saturday, doesn't start on Sunday. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me, but the story changes from when I originally wrote this note, because by the time that Sunday's game ended, he came up in a big spot and didn't come through. And then he comes up in the top of the 10th with a runner on third and 2 outs, and the Dodgers basically needing to score a run because of the ghost runner rule. And with 2 outs and I believe 2 strikes, a great piece of hitting, ropes a ball opposite way into left field to knock a run in. All this is a crazy, because on one hand, I'm like, he's 1 for 10 with 5 strikeouts. Okay, rookie, overmatched. But then they're not playing him. He's better. He's the minor league, the AAA. He's their best hitter against lefties. They're not playing him against lefties. They have guys that can't hit. Nobody can hit lefties on the Dodgers. Michael Busch is right there. They're not using him. And then he comes up today, Matt, with, besides Mookie's home run, the biggest hit of the game. So what the heck do we do with Michael Busch from here on out? What should we do? And then what do you think the Dodgers will do? Because I think those are 2 separate things.
Definitely 2 separate things. And I think, unfortunately, the ship has sort of sailed on him, at least for the time being. And I know there's a layer to it. And I've seen some of the comments alluding to, his future is very much contingent on JD Martinez, which, again, we'll get to JD here in a few minutes. But I think what should have happened is Busch should have received more opportunities since he's been up. It was a little bit of it was a little bit of a fluke thing that he, had a chance to join the roster and then even stick around because, it looked like, okay, he's up because Muncy's going on paternity leave. Once Muncy's ready to come back, then Busch is obviously, just going to be optioned. That's just how this stuff works. But then JD went on the injured list because of his back trouble. So it was like, okay, like he's sticking around. Like there's more opportunities. They even DFA'd Austin Wins. And so, it's like, okay, like keeping him around. And then, you kind of look back and see, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, like you just alluded to, like 1 start here, 1 pinch hit here. But
weird.
Now that they're heading to Milwaukee, the Brewers are starting 2 lefties during the series. Dave Roberts already said Trayce Thompson was going to make 2 starts in Milwaukee. So I'm guessing that's going to cut into any opportunity Busch might receive. And, I think just in terms of hierarchy, pecking order, like he is behind Hayward, which I think you and I would both agree is fair.
Maybe not against lefties, though, because apparently Hayward's not allowed to ever hit against lefties.
True. But then I think he's then also behind, somebody like David Peralta, who the Dodgers obviously see as, being with the team for the entire course of the season. So, I would start Busch at least one of the games against the Brewers. But, I think maybe that's what we see at the most. But if not, it wouldn't surprise me if it's still more of the same of, hey, like he's available off the bench.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the quotes that Trayce Thompson is going to start twice. It's I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Like we joked on the post-game show. I joked with Blake. I was like, man, it would be so awesome if the Dodgers had a guy that had been at AAA and was just crushing lefties that they could bring up to hit against lefties. It would be awesome if that guy had a pedigree to maybe where there was belief that he could do it. Like it would be awesome if he was already on the 40-man roster so they didn't even need to make any roster moves. Oh, wait, they do. That's Michael Busch. He literally has the highest OPS at AAA against left-handed pitching on the entire Dodgers team against lefties. And he's already there. And he's a top 100 prospect. And he's already on the 40-man. And your DH is on the injured list. Like all of these things are lining up for Michael Busch to get his chance. And yes, he struggles his first 3 games, but to sit him out the entire Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the Cardinals, give him 1 start against the Phillies. He doesn't start Tuesday, doesn't start Wednesday, doesn't start Friday, doesn't start Saturday, doesn't start Sunday. What are we keeping this guy around for? And then the irony again is he comes up with the biggest hit in the 10th inning on a great piece of hitting and basically gives you exactly what they're expecting. Matt, they pinch hit Miguel Rojas ahead of Michael Busch today. Miguel Rojas, whatever you want to say about him defensively, he's awful offensively. He was the 3rd worst hitter in all of Major League Baseball last year. Like, it's madness. It makes no sense to me. To your point, there's no DH. JD Martinez is hurt. Michael Busch should be DHing every single freaking day. Trayce Thompson can't hit lefties, has not hit lefties for multiple years. Like, This makes no sense to me, the way they're treating Michael Busch. And I get we've said, oh, they don't have a spot for him. Well, guess what? Right now they do. They do have a spot for him. They don't have an everyday designated hitter. He can hit lefties. He can hit righties. The only question is defense, and that's not an issue right now. It makes no sense to me. None.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the only thing I can think of is like I said, they're looking at it as Busch isn't necessarily somebody that they were counting on for the entire season, whereas these other guys they are, and so he's kind of up because of circumstance and sort of emergency type thing. Yeah, I mean, and even to your point about Rojas, what he brings defensively, Hayward was the DH, so that was a non-factor Sunday because Rojas wasn't playing the field. It was you were using him for his quote unquote bat, but yeah, I mean, maybe we'll see him. I don't know, in 2 games in Milwaukee, and one of those is a start potentially.
Rojas and Barnes should literally never pinch hit, like ever under any circumstance, unless it is for a pitcher. You want to put Rojas in as a defender at shortstop, fine. Like if Barnes is starting because Smith needs an off day, fine. Like those two, like Trace Thompson. What is Trace Thompson doing on the roster if Rojas is pinch hitting in that spot? What is Michael Busch doing on the roster if Rojas is pinch hitting in that spot? Like, there's no point in having these guys around if you think they are worse offensively than Miguel Rojas. Like, if you think Trace Thompson is worse offensively than Miguel Rojas, again, in any circumstance, against lefties, against righties, against anybody, he has no place on the roster then. Go use the roster spot on somebody else. I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think the way they don't look, I don't think the Dodgers look at it as, oh, Rojas is pitch hitting before Trace Thompson, which means we trust his bat more. I think, and I know the fans, I'll keep an eye on the comments as I say this, the Dodgers look at the matchups, and Dave Roberts has said it before. I liked Austin Barnes in that spot. I liked Miguel Rojas in that spot. I liked Trace. So, and they look at more than just handedness. And so I think a lot of it is, okay, the type of pitcher that was, I don't remember who it was for the Padres that was on the mound when Rojas pinch hit. I think it might have been Tim Hill, actually. That's why he was a lefty, and that's why they pulled Hayward. For whatever reason, they may have preferred Miguel Rojas in that spot to Trace Thompson at that point.
There's no spot ever. There's no spot ever anybody with the brain should ever think that love Miguel Rojas in the spot. That never. I know you're not.
I hear
saying
what you're
it.
saying.
I know, you're telling me what Dave Roberts has said. Like Miguel Rojas is so bad. Like even you could take Chris Taylor at his worst, and you could still make a case like, hey, against lefties, like he might be a better option than somebody else. Like maybe you could get me there. Like again, Trace Thompson, he's awful against lefties. I would take him every day and twice on Sunday over Austin Barnes and Miguel Rojas in any spot offensively. Like the fact that they hit righties, like they never use Trace against righties is like a whole nother conversation. But this is the piece. And again, you have a guy in Michael Busch who is not super young, like who's been in the system for a few years, is a top 100 prospect. And the only question literally any evaluator has about him is his glove. There's the only question. Like nobody is like, this guy won't be able to hit at the major league level. Nobody's saying that. And yet they don't let him hit. They trust the guy who can't hit and has a glove to pinch hit for the DH. And guess what? Rojas stunk, and Michael Busch came up and got the game-winning hit in the 10th inning. Like, to act like that's a surprise that those two outcomes happened to those two players is crazy to me. So anyways, I need to calm myself down, take a couple deep breaths. The Busch thing just pisses me off. Like, it's like you would think he was a family member. It makes no sense to bring a young guy up and to have him sit. Again, he plays 3 straight days since the last game in Pittsburgh. He sat out. He basically has not started. He started one time in what? 7 days, 7 games, 9 games. He started one time in 9 games. Sat out the entire weekend in St. Louis. He started one time against Philadelphia, and he started 0 times against San Diego with 2 pinch hit opportunities. It's madness on a team, by the way, that is like can't find anybody to hit at the bottom of their lineup. That's like running guys out there who is just, it's a black hole. Anyways. Okay. Anything last, you want to say anything else on Michael Busch? I need to stop myself here.
I'll just answer. BMR 209 was that, I mean, you joked. It sounds like you're related to him. He was asking if Busch is a family member, and we can clarify that Michael Busch is not a family member of yours, but you still feel very strongly about it.
I know. And often I get this way about guys who have come on the show who've been nice to us. Like I defend those guys. I've never talked to Michael Busch. Sure, he's a great guy. Would love to have him on, tried to have him on, but then he got called up right away. It was a bummer. I had all these guys at the AAA that were about to come on the show. And then it was like, oh, sorry, Stone got promoted. Oh, sorry, Busch got promoted. It's like, man, anyways. Okay. All right. A couple odds and ends real quick. JD Martinez, we've mentioned it, was expected back Tuesday. Now they are saying expected back Friday. So on the heels of this Michael Busch conversation, Michael Busch probably going to stay on the roster through at least the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday series of this week. Is that about right, Matt?
Yeah. So, and it seems, I was a little, I don't want to say skeptical, but I thought it was straight. Dave, when he said JD would be returning during the Brewer series, just not all that had been ruled out initially was Monday. And then he was asked, okay, like, will he need a rehab assignment before being activated? And he said, that's something that the training staff and JD Martinez would sort out. And it could just be a matter of the Dodgers bringing in some minor league pitchers to get him some at bats, which they've done in the past, although it's easier to do when they're at home. So I was frankly a little surprised to hear that, potentially JD would be coming back during the Brewer series just because of the logistics of everything. And so now the plan is to send him to Arizona, face some live pitching there throughout the week, and then get him back on Friday when they start their homestand. And you hope that goes well, but with back injuries, you never necessarily know. So we'll see.
And look, I know there's varying reviews of JD Martinez thus far this season, most of it having to do with just the fact that they signed a DH at all and kind of the amount of money that they're paying him. I will say this, for when he has been on the field, JD Martinez, StatCast numbers are really good. 89th percentile, exit velocity, 87th percentile barrel rate. He is striking out a lot. He is whiffing a lot, but when he puts the ball in play, it's loud contact. You look at his numbers, he's got an 840 OPS, a 122 weighted runs created plus. So whatever you think about the contract and the decision to sign JD Martinez, when he has been in the lineup, he has been very good. He is a consistent bat in the middle of the lineup. So I think that is good news when he does come back. Let's get to some questions here. If you've got a question, put it in the chat. All caps question. I see some of you are doing that. So thank you. I'm going to start with one real quick, Matt, as we dive into some people's questions here. Give me your thoughts on the Padres scoreboard operator. I saw someone in the chat post earlier. I don't know if this is true, that it's been reported that the person who did it may have been fired. I think someone said on San Diego post-game radio, they said that the person had been fired. I have no idea. If you missed it, they beat the Dodgers Friday. They posted basically a mocked up picture of Clayton Kershaw crying tears on their Jumbotron. Kershaw said it wasn't a big deal. Dave Roberts said, I'm not allowed to comment on it. I forget what the word he used was, but anyways, I thought it was stupid and ridiculous and low class and pathetic and fill in the blank. Kershaw took the high road. On his behalf, I'm not going to take the high road. I thought it was unbelievably pathetic. It's like you want to pretend, Padres, like you're a real major league organization who should be taken seriously, and yet you act like the little brother who's showing up to a party and doesn't know that he's supposed to be wearing something nice. I mean, that's like the vibe that I got from the Padres. And this just sort of, they were telling on themselves in this moment, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't see it happen. I hit publish on our recap and then had to quickly, head to the elevator to get downstairs. And so I missed it live and I didn't see it until, we came back up from doing post-game interviews. I agree with everything you said. Like, it's, had they done that in the playoffs last year after eliminating the Dodgers, then okay. And I think they still would have taken some heat for going at Kershaw specifically. But to do it, first head-to-head matchup of a new season, like, just take Fernando Tatis had a good game. Like, he hit the 2 home runs off Kershaw. Just take that win and, celebrate that way. Like, you don't need to, kind of put the Dodgers down. Like you said, I think it kind of just sort of, the Padres want to establish themselves as a legitimate franchise, World Series contender, and so forth. But doing something like this is what an inferior team would do, with kind of an inferiority complex, because they're trying to stake their ground. And like I said earlier in the show, I'm not sure if maybe they forgot. And obviously the Padres players didn't have a hand in this, but hey, there was still a series to be played, and now you look up and you just lost 2 of 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get to some questions here. Jason wants to know, do you feel like Tim Anderson is a fit if he shakes free? Would you give up 2 of the top 5 to 15 prospects? I think it would be more expensive than 2 of the prospects in the 5 to 15 range would be my guess. I think somebody down below said they suggested, it was Michael Bush and anyways, I'd have to look it up. Somebody else, like Michael Bush and somebody else, maybe a Pepio or that type of player, I would think at least. So apologies for whoever suggested it. But is Tim Anderson a fit, Matt, if he were available on the trade market? Obviously a shortstop. He's under team control for one more season. After this, he's got a $14 million club option, 29-year-old, about to turn 30 years old, plays shortstop, hits right-handed, hits lefties very, very well, which doesn't hurt for his career. He's a 328 hitter with a 134 weighted runs created plus. So I'm guessing, Matt, all of that adds up to this is a guy you would be interested in. Is that true?
That is true. I think at the right price, I wouldn't necessarily overpay for Tim Anderson, but also I'll add the caveat that he's not somebody that I've ever been, particularly high on, and not that I've been down on him per se, but I don't know if I would, sort of empty the upper echelon of the prospect cupboard to get him.
Yeah.
If Chris Taylor goes back into his regression and Miguel Rojas still isn't hitting, and we're sitting here in July and things are looking a little bleak at the shortstop position, then I may change my stance at that point. But even, as of now, I'm not sure if I would do it.
Yeah. The thing about Anderson is he hits lefties. We know the Dodgers need it. He's got one more year of team control. We've talked about this. I think here's the pros of Tim Anderson are Tim Anderson's incredibly good. He hits lefties. He plays shortstop. Those are all things that the 2023 version of the Dodgers seem to need. The downside to Tim Anderson is the cost is going to be expensive. I think he's a guy that's got a lot of value around the league. If he is moved, it would not come cheap, especially with another year of control, pretty affordably below market value on there. I've said all along that I wouldn't go out and acquire a shortstop. I think Mookie Betts has proven he can play a competent enough shortstop that you can go and find an equivalent Tim. Like you can find a Tim Anderson level bat to play left field or right field, and the prospect cost will be half as much, if even that. I think that's just a way easier piece to find. That's what I would go and do, because the other piece of this is you have Gavin Lux coming back next season. And regardless of like whether you think Gavin Lux can play shortstop, he's going to play somewhere. He's got to be part of the long-term answer, unless he's part of the Tim Anderson trade, which that would be crazy. But like Miguel Vargas is going to be your second baseman, it seems like, maybe third base. Michael Bush, if he's part of the long-term plans, maybe third base, maybe DH, maybe left field. Like Max Muncy's going to be around. So you've got like, you don't have infinite number of places on the roster to put all of these guys. So if they traded for him, I would be pumped up. It would make the 2023 Dodgers a lot better. He hits lefties. I just wouldn't pay what I imagine will be a pretty high cost in order to go and get him. Again, I would rather just go find somebody who plays left field or right field and get them that can mash lefties. So that would be my answer. Okay, David wants to know, the eighth inning today frustrated me. It's not a crime to play a little bit of small ball. Agree, Matt? Not a crime to bunt some guys over, productive outs, huh?
I do agree with that, and I know it's not a popular opinion. I think, there is value to getting guys into second and third with one out, as opposed to, first and third and, taking your chances with, depending on obviously who's hitting. I think in this specific situation, it may have been, was this the Rojas at bat that he might be asking about?
I'd have to.
But yeah, when the timing is right, I'm not opposed to bunting. And I know Blake's in the chat. He's probably going to chime in at some point, say never bunt. I don't think you're a big fan of it either. But to me, there still is some room for it in, of specific situations.
So this was, am I looking at it right? Yeah. So this is Michael Bush pinch hitting for Rojas. So Will Smith doubles, leadoff double, Max Muncy walk, and then Bush pinch hitting for Rojas. Bush strikes out, Outman flies out, Vargas lines out. So they had runners at first and second with nobody out, and didn't get anybody around. If I'm remembering right, looking at the
that sounds right. So
Rojas
I would have left Rojas in and just had him bunt the two guys over, and then taken my chances with Outman getting something in the air.
Yeah. Look, I've joked I love small ball if Austin Barnes is hitting. Like, yeah, let's get that guy. I mean, he hasn't bunted successfully yet this year that I know of, but look, if you've got Michael Bush and James Outman up, look, productive outs are great. Like, but at the end of the day, you're trying to get hits. You're not just trying to tie the game there. You're trying to take advantage. So I don't hate it. But obviously it didn't work out that time. But the fact that they chose, to play the way they did has led to more success than it has failures, I would say. Okay, food question. Here we go. Dong wants to know which city has better tacos, LA or San Diego? I was going to ask about Phil's barbecue. We learned much from the ribs take last week. LOL. I haven't. I've had some burritos back in the day in San Diego, but it has been a while. So Matt, I don't know if you have a strong opinion. You were down there for the game on Friday. I'm guessing you didn't get a chance to partake of some tacos. Have you spent much time eating tacos in San Diego?
I've been in San Diego plenty, and honestly, I haven't had tacos that really stick out there. So I'll say that LA has better tacos. Also, I've been to Phil's barbecue. It is good. I don't get ribs there. They have other they have like sandwiches and stuff. Barbecue
Hold on,
sandwiches.
hold on. Can we ask what you do order at the barbecue joint?
I would have to. It's been a few years. I think I've done like a pulled pork sandwich and maybe brisket, if I remember
all right.
correctly. So it's good. Phil's is good.
I will let you. So what was it? Thursday night, I was on the Lakers Nation stream filling in for Trevor because Lakers Nation had a live watch party that Trevor and a bunch of folks were at. So me and Sean Davis were on, and Sean was one of the few people that if you missed our live show, it must have been last week, somebody asked us our favorite type of ribs. You and Blake both said you don't like ribs or that they're overrated, I believe was the exact language. So Sean Davis, who was on the Lakers thing, he retweeted it saying he agrees with you. So I was poking fun at him, and somebody asked in the chat, hey, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? And the Sean Davis who hates ribs also said vanilla is his favorite flavor of ice cream. And I was like, this is perfect. This is just a full circle moment. So I'll ask you, Matt, can you confirm that vanilla is not your favorite flavor of ice cream, or is it?
No, it is not my favorite flavor. My favorite flavor of ice cream is Jamaican almond fudge from Baskin Robbins, which is ironic because it has like a coffee taste, and I don't like coffee. I don't drink coffee, but I love that ice cream. I see really quick, just a quick tangent. Gary A. I'm not somebody who eats pizza with a knife and fork, but hey, good guess.
There you go. There you go. I know the problem once we get to questions is I have to scroll up in the chat to get to all the questions. So I miss like the live conversation that's happening around these. Here's Blake. He posted this: Bush, Pepio, and someone else good. Pages ? For Anderson, probably. He has an extra year of control. So there you go. Bush, Pepio, and Pages. That's a pretty steep price. I probably wouldn't hate like those three guys because I don't know what the ceiling is for any of them. Bush defensively, where he fits. Pepio, is he more than a fourth or fifth starter at best / high end reliever? And then Pages, I think, has like a high variability of whether or not he actually pans out. So that would be an interesting package. But there we go. Victor wants to know, is Trace Thompson in trouble to stay in the roster? Victor, my prediction at the beginning of the year was that Trace Thompson wasn't going to last long. He hit 3 home runs. I had to back off that take a little bit. I should have stayed strong because I don't know if he has 3 hits since that particular game. I don't know. I mean, he probably should. Again, if they don't trust him to hit against righties, they don't trust him to hit against, or they do trust him against lefties, and he's terrible against lefties. They trust Miguel Rojas more than him. I mean, the writing is on the wall for me. I don't foresee anything changing anytime soon. Just because like if Michael Bush had come up and torn the cover off the ball and was hitting 400 and then JD Martinez came back and they had to figure something out, maybe, but that's not what happened. Maybe that's why they benched Michael Bush, just so they wouldn't see him tear the cover off the ball so that they wouldn't have to make a decision. I don't know, but I think Trace Thompson's here to stay for at least a little while, although I'm not defending it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see any movement with him until closer to trade deadline because, maybe he's somebody they include in a trade, and if not, they'll, just look to potentially DFA him if they need to free up some roster space and or playing time.
Yeah, related. TQT. Do you give Trace some at-bats versus righties before releasing him? Yes, absolutely. He should be hitting against right-handed pitching and only against right-handed pitching. I would rather have Jason Hayward in there against lefties than Trace Thompson. So there you go. Dakers 11. Ohtani deal in the works by midseason. Matt, I know you've long been on this train. You think Ohtani becomes a Dodger this season, or do they have to wait till the offseason to make their run?
No, I think that's going to be a free agency thing. I don't see a trade. I don't see the Angels trading him. I mean, for them, it would. They're not necessarily going anywhere on the field, and if you trade Ohtani, then you lose your only business chip off the field. And so I don't see Artie Moreno doing something like that. And before we get any questions, I am not related to Artie Moreno.
There you go. There you go. Okay. This is a good one. Not a question here. Swellen Sausage says there's no onions or good mustard for $8 Dodger dogs. I'm curious, Matt, in a perfect world, you're having a hot dog, which maybe that's not a perfect world, but if you're eating a hot dog, what goes on your hot dog?
I like a chili cheese hot dog.
Okay.
And I'll add to this, the Petco Park press box makes great hot dogs for free. So the way Dodger dogs are set out for free at Dodger Stadium, they do the same.
This
at
is
Petco
for
Park.
press. For press, to be clear. Don't get your hopes
For
up
press,
thinking you're
yeah,
going to get a Dodger dog.
Yeah, it's not a Dodger dog, obviously, that the Padres serve, but the hot dog they provide is much better than a Dodger dog. And if people who have watched and been along with us, they know that I don't think Dodger dogs are any good.
Yeah. Now, are you saying they put chili out with the free hot dogs in San Diego?
So yeah, they do put chili and nacho cheese out, but also because that's for obviously you could put it on your hot dog, but they have it for nachos too.
Okay.
But Dodger Stadium does set out chili and cheese as well, but there's just no salvaging a Dodger dog. I'm sorry.
Wow. Hear that? So you can make it into a chili cheese dog and you're still out on it.
I mean, I'll eat, like, if I'm starving, if I didn't necessarily have dinner and it gets to the 6th or 7th inning, then I'll go for it. But I mean, it takes a lot for me to decide, okay, I'm going to eat a Dodger dog.
Yeah, I felt like chili cheese was sort of a cop out to what you put on your hot dog there. I mean, it's a good answer, but I was sort of expecting like condiments. Like if you go to Costco, what are you putting on your hot dog at Costco?
Just ketchup.
Okay, just ketchup. All right.
Yeah.
I'm a ketchup, mustard, and onions guy. That's my order. I'll throw relish on there every once in a while just to mix it up. Some sauerkraut. I'm good. I've come a long way, but I'll eat a plain. I mean, Costco hot dogs are incredible. I'd eat a plain Costco hot dog. So there you go. All right. I think that might be it. Do we have any more questions here? Oh, that's like a random one. How much will you give to Ohtani as a free agent, Matt? 500 million?
I mean, I feel like you basically have to, right? That's probably what the floor is sort of starting at for him. I think it's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm skeptical as to how invested the Dodgers will be. I think it could be another situation of we were aggressive in the terms of, a 3-year, $300 million contract type thing. But we'll see.
Yeah, there we go. I love this. We're just going to end with this. THP says Matt finally has a food W, and then immediately it's Jason, no coffee, just ketchup. Good God, Dong, just ketchup? ? So there we go. We needed to close out the show with at least one terrible Matt, or at least polarizing. I'll say polarizing Matt food opinion. I think we got there. Just ketchup on his hot dog. I did say chili cheese before that, to be fair. So there you go. Deuce says, by the way, that Ohtani's getting 600 million. We undershot that by 100 million. So who knows there? But hey, everybody, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here every Sunday night doing this show. I know next week is Mother's Day, so do your Mother's Day stuff, 9 p.m. Matt and I will be here talking Dodgers, recapping the week. Again, it'll be another weekend series against the Padres. So please subscribe, ring the notification bell here, and set your calendars to join us every Sunday at 9 p.m., at least for the next few weeks. Starting in June, the time might move a little bit earlier, but stay tuned on that front. Also, throughout the week, we do live watch parties. This Tuesday, I believe we're not doing one because it's a weird early start time again. Oh, yeah, 4:40 in Milwaukee. But we will be back Friday night, Padres at Dodgers, 7:10 p.m. So check us out over at playback.tv/DodgerBlue1958 this Friday. Join us there. If you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get it, please find our Dodger Heads podcast, rate, review, like, follow. We would greatly appreciate it. That's Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. As always, thank you for joining us, and go Dodgers.